That's how, that's how we prioritize, right? I mean, because what you're talking about, fleet right sizing, that is, that is exactly, that's one of the recommended actions in the energy plan. So let's get the task force formed. Let's get
I don't
representatives.
see why you can't put that bug in the ear now.
We have, we
We
did,
have,
we
and
did
they're
it.
receptive to it, so
Right.
we don't need a task force to do that.
We don't, but we need a task force just so that we've got everybody on the same page and the left hand knowing what the right hand is doing. I think, I think there's value to having it. You're right. We can be doing that and we're advocating for it already. So I'm sorry, I will again pause. Other thoughts?
What are the thoughts?
Can you speak into the mic?
Yeah. And that's been brought up before Connecticut Greenway Council, and when they consider new awards, is have, are you sitting on money that you've gotten past rewards? In other words, have you been slow to complete the design and get started with the construction? Otherwise, we're not going to give you any awards and any more money until you use what you already have. So that if we've got, approved grants on hand, we should expedite implementation. Because we won't get new money until we use the old.
And I think that's a question for town staff in terms of what the status is of various things. I know we have gotten money and I don't know, we've gotten grants. I don't know where those things are.
Yeah, if they're not moving, then maybe need additional outside design people to expedite the projects.
So if there's anyone online we haven't heard from who would like to weigh in, or Nancy, if Nancy, you would like to weigh in?
I could say, but see if anybody online.
Okay, is there anyone online? Nope. Okay. And no hands up? Okay. Okay. So, yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Nancy.
maybe a year ago or
Can you get closer to the mic?
a year ago or 200 years ago or sometime, you were talking about dividing the work on the committee into categories. And in theory, they're still there, but I was just looking at all these things that we have and thinking it might be easier if we did that, if we divided it, into like subgroups on the committee, and we had certain people in charge of the different headings or topics, and could also, incorporate community people into like, subcommittee meetings and then report back, not because we're such a huge committee that we have to break into parts, but because there's so many things that could be done, should be done, haven't been done to date, etc. And this lines up in a way, and with the CROG document as far as topics, because I think waste was one of the things you were thinking of, but I don't know if it's a big enough topic for a whole committee. I mean, what are you going to do? But so I just kind of looking at dividing things large and small into nature-based solutions, which is sort of the new word now. And they have agricultural, natural working lands as a topic. Electric generation or renewable energy kind of all together, including affordability issues, because again, if we think about the town we're supposed to be representing, affordability is a big issue, and we ought not to forget that for people who live in town, even though I don't think we address it as much as we should. And then resilience, climate change as it relates, or as it should be addressed through resiliency. hazard mitigation, I guess that's the other thing the other terminology CROG is using right now, because some might say we've waited too long. And so we have to start thinking about public safety and what are we going to do? You know, how prepared are we for things that could happen, that happen on a weekly basis around this country? You know, that have or have not yet happened in Bloomfield, but could. And I know the POCD is supposed to have some of those factors this year. And so I'm just thinking that we could divide into those, more or less those three groups. We can play around with it, but under nature-based or healthy environment, however we want to call it, it includes things that are somewhat more project-based, the micro, like the mosquitoes, the pollinator pathway, whatever we may be doing there, other than promoting it, bird safe glass, if that's still out there to be dealt with. Trees, trees for Bloomfield and Tree City. Maybe the composting pilot, depending on where it's going, but some of these things also have state level, action going on. We'll put it that way. Put that on the side for a minute. Greenway, Safeways, the litter. These are all there. I would call those environmental issues. Not necessarily all climate change. The climate change has an impact on them, or they may have a little bit of an impact on climate change, but they're not the main climate change action, but they're, healthy and good and good for public health and our people in our town. Dark skies, PFAS, which we've mentioned. Electricity generation really requires people to know a lot more than I do, because, I'm lucky if I get a battery in the right way, but that would be like the EV question, solar on municipal buildings, getting the updates on where the town has gone with its usage of electricity. Where are we, is there more we could be doing? What's our town plan for all that, and does it need to be updated? Again, there's a bill at the state level, which I cannot tell you the details of till I read it. But it's promoting solar on schools. And I think the governor's behind it, so it must be something in his budget. So therefore, something we should find out about. And then resiliency and climate change would be the kind of more institutional things, like the climate task force, getting an environmental planner, and then, looking at the POCD and Sustainable Connecticut, which, like where are we in the grand scheme of things, maybe keeping an eye on CROG. That's more the big projects, the funding, where are we going? We don't want to miss anything. We want to advocate for things. And, it just seems to me that the environmental planner is probably, if we can get that position, that person should be the advocate, both at the giving input to the town budget, as well as keeping an eye on the things at the state level. And there's lots of ways to do that. You don't have to do all you just join the groups that are doing all this work and find out what's happening as it relates to where Bloomfield wants to go. That's really hard to do from the outside. I mean, I can follow the bills I want, but it's not necessarily the ones that are going to benefit the town, or that the CEEC as a committee should be focused on.
Did you get all that? Okay, good. Curious, I mean,
I'm not saying that's the only division of projects.
no,
because
no.
That can be played with, but it just.
Right, and then basically, obviously, we're not gonna finish this discussion today. Because we're at 45 minutes in, and, we need to talk about other things. I guess so I have two, first of all, I agree with the idea that we need to divide up. And certainly what you're suggesting sounds to me like a reasonable way to go at it. Maybe it gets tweaked a little bit, but how do we kind of, divide things up so that we've got, because that's how CEC is effective. CEC is effective when people work on things that they're interested in, and they kind of drive certain things, because not everybody can do everything. So I think that's a great idea, and I think we can get to that, and continue talking about that, and put it on the agenda for next month. I guess a question, what I'm looking for maybe today to kind of wrap it up is, and maybe it's not a fair question to ask because I don't think everyone has looked at this prior to the meeting, is what's in that last column kind of a comprehensive, and I mean, I don't want to add too much more to it. I wouldn't advocate because there's a lot there already. Is that pretty comprehensive? Yes, Bob?
Yeah, I believe it's on that document, the, a summary of schools in solar.
Yes,
And it mentioned
yes.
that air conditioning equipment on the roof prohibited solar on that particular school. And then also one school didn't have a flat roof. Of course, I would immediately ask her, does it have a slope roof and is it sloping in the right direction?
Right, but that's fine, and that's fine. But I also am not going to be, I don't, we don't know what we don't know. I'm also not going to make the assumption that they haven't thoroughly considered a lot of things and are still looking at them. And, one person came up to me after the Board of Education meeting ended and just made the comment that she thought the idea of doing canopies in the parking lots was a marvelous idea. I mean, it's like, what a great idea, if we can't do it on the roofs, can we do it in the parking lots? So again, I think, yes. Go ahead.
Well, I was just a comment. We broached that at Seabury, putting in more solar canopies. And right now, the cost of steel is so much that you can't come even near paying for it with the solar energy.
Yeah, so it's not cost effective.
It's, you can
Right.
put it 3 or 4 foot off the ground.
Yep.
Because you don't need very much steel. But when you put it that high, you've got to have strong structures.
So those are all the
Right now, it's
considerations.
cost
Right.
prohibitive
Okay.
between interest rates and the
Right.
cost of steel.
Okay, so let me go back to let's just go back. Is this a fairly comprehensive list in terms of what we're talking about? And is that something we can work with in terms of maybe divvying things up? And please take a look at it before the next meeting. Because I think I did send it out. Is it in an email? Okay, so
Maybe you
I'll
could-
make sure. Did you?
I feel like I've seen it, but
Yeah, I think I think I
not a
did.
good witness anymore.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
I will resend it.
Yeah, just separately, because I think when it was sent previously, there was several items, and so.
Right.
Kind of got lost.
Okay, so let me resend it. Everyone's homework, including mine, for next month is to look at it again, make sure we have in it. And I would say the agenda item would be to think about, okay, let's kind of look at it, maybe eliminate things that we don't think make sense to the degree there's something we want to strike. And then let's think about how to divide and conquer and work on it. But I do think we want to push for the climate task force because I think there's an appetite on the Board of Education's part to, support that. And that helps us start thinking about things together.
One of the thoughts as far as
Yeah,
the Board of Education and dealing with their food waste
Yep.
is, I don't know how many pounds per day they throw out, say at the high school or any particular school, but I'm sure Seabury would be willing to entertain a tour of people from the Board of Education and maybe the principal or even students at the school to see what we got to
right,
see if it's, they should follow.
right. And Bob brought a sample of the compost that they're producing, which is, yep, cool. And we should pass it around.
Yeah, if anyone would be,
Yeah.
feel free to
Yep.
put your hands in it.
Pass it around, yep. Okay, so is that kind of we've got a plan for next month? I'll resend this, the most up-to-date version. And, our plan will be to
Soil.
see if anything should be eliminated, and we'll talk about how to structure it so that we can move forward. Okay. Everyone's distracted now. You're smelling the soil, okay.
Don't mistake it for ground coffee.
Okay, yeah, that's what it looked like. Okay,
Pretty inert. Pretty inert, right? Yeah.
all right. So we're moving,
Break.
we're moving on. I think we've talked a bit about PCAP already, so I think we're ready to talk about the Board of Ed presentation update. I would like to give David an opportunity to give his impressions, thoughts. Bob attended, and so I'm interested in hearing what you folks thought of it.
I felt they were very, very receptive to our being there. And that was expressed multiple times. And there were good questions. They seemed interested regarding vehicles. They were under the impression that DATCO had promised them 2 electric buses. And that had fallen by the wayside. So they were going to follow up on that. They seem interested in the downsizing. There were a number of questions. The one question I thought was particularly important was, what is the difference between your committee, CEC, and the task force? That was the question. And hearing that question made me go back to John's recommendation several months ago that the task force be run by the CEC. I've never completely understood that. And I still don't know if the difference between this group of volunteers and a task force made up of town employees as well as volunteers really came across to them. And I still think that whoever runs the task force has to have a certain amount of authority, which I don't think we have, to get things done. And that's why I think it needs to come from the town manager. So I found that question very, very insightful on their part. And so bring it back to you all for discussion.
Bob, do you want to add your thoughts, and then I'll kind of wrap up on that? Yeah.
I would just back up the idea of the town manager, because on the Energy Committee in South Windsor, the town manager often sets in on it.
Right, and I think, the point is kind of authority. I mean, that really is, I think we would gladly participate and have representation, but we don't have the authority that's needed to say you really need to participate, if you have a representative from DPW, it doesn't have to be the director, it can be somebody, who's assistant or somebody who's representing the department. But I think that's what we need, and I think we do need broad representation, and they were keen on the idea of students and so forth. And I tried to, because I think I attempted to answer that question. What's the difference? And it's like, we are residents, we are appointed. We are appointed by the, we're appointed by the town council, but this climate task force is supposed to have this broad representation, including department heads, Board of Education, and so on and so forth. We would be on, hopefully we would be on it, we would be represented, but we aren't it. That's the distinction. We are not it. Go ahead.
If we change the title of our organization, we could call it the Task Force Energy and Environment.
But John, you made a very good point when you suggested that, and I want to be sure I understand.
Yeah, I agree with Lloyd. I mean, I think I would not sell this committee short, quite frankly. I mean, I think you have more impact than you may think you have. But obviously you do not have the legal authority.
Yeah.
That rests with the council and the town manager. My only concern is that and I think this conversation needs to be had with the new town manager as soon as the town manager is up and running, is that this could be a very large task force. And large task force often move like oil tankers.
Correct.
And right.
Too quickly.
And this is a very nimble group. And I think that the key thing is that either the task force or this group with maybe some expanded membership, if it's officially empowered by the council or the manager, I think it could be very effective. And that can be an empowerment by ordinance as opposed to by resolution. I'm not, and I think you want that membership, but I'm still not convinced I would sell this particular group short in terms of its ability to influence decision-making and implementation. My observation has been that while it's been a challenge, I think you're as effective as any organization and department group in the citywide organization at this point in having an impact and effectuating decisions that you want to have happen. If you're not comfortable doing that and you think it needs to come directly out of the manager's office, that's fine, but I would caution against a very large organization being able to move nimbly the way I think this needs to move nimbly.
Yep, Bob, and then I have a comment. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, on that, having the town manager or the head of a department here, when we have something we want to implement or such, it's often the case that that manager or the town manager has already initiated something in that direction. So often it's a question of reinforcing what the town manager or department head is doing. And that works much more smoothly rather than, okay, we got a brand new idea. Well, it may not be brand new. They may have been trying and not succeeded.
Right. So two comments. And then I want to kind of wrap up the Board of Ed and just some closing comments. Your point about having it not be too big so that it's relatively nimble is well taken. So I take your point. And I think in terms of the commentary I had in terms of inclusivity, I think you could have a smaller committee, but a way to potentially communicate and network with these other groups and make sure their input is taken. So I think that's an excellent point. And I agree with you, Bob. Just going through this exercise, this is the point. The point is town staff is very busy and often doesn't have time. It's not, it's not malintent, often doesn't have time to even respond to questions. Just in terms of getting updates on what's going on, both from the Board of Ed and from the town, that was a really valuable outcome of going through this exercise with PCAP and submitting comments and so forth. So that is part of our concern in terms of taking a lead is our capacity and yeah, our effectiveness, because are we going to get the responses we need when we need them? So, we should talk more about it. So let's continue having that conversation because I think climate task force formation in some form, we should try to get that done in the next several months and we should have a conversation. Okay, go ahead, David, and then I'm going to close.
The beauty about a task force, if it's well run, is that it can coordinate priorities across the town.
Right.
And if those priorities are coordinated, then there can be, there needs to be authority, there needs to be accountability, and there needs to be priorities that are coordinated across town. Um, and then it can sing.
Right, and that was the point that was made in the energy plan about having a climate task force, is having a coordinated effort in terms of setting your priorities and also, looking for potential funding. The Board of Education does have a grant writer who I actually met face to face for the first time after the Board of Education meeting. It was great. She was very excited. Um, it was just a really good, robust conversation. I will just sort of reiterate, I stayed till the very end of the meeting. So I got to, listen to the Board of Ed comments, and all of them commented on just what a robust meeting it had been in general, but just their appreciation for CEC coming out and finding out about what we did and the opportunity to work together and things that we had brought up that they wanted to think about. And it was, we were very well received. And, I obviously need to turn around and send an email out, which I haven't done yet, but I will, to the chair of the Board of Education, asking her to loop in the acting superintendent, just to say, what can we do in terms of having another conversation to figure out how to, how to connect and do this. In terms of student involvement, we should at least be teeing things up for the next school year, and that takes some lead time. Yep, go ahead.
I'd-
Wrap up.
I'd really like to see, you could, ask students, okay, where do we need to put sidewalks or bike paths for you to be able to get to school without going on a bus? And I think they would take an interest in that, because typically, they don't, they don't want to ride the bus. They don't want to wait for the bus at either end. And if they can walk, they're in equal time, walk with their friends, it's much more desirable.
Right, and I'm sorry, I will have the final word here, only because one of the committee, one of the Board of Ed members liked the idea of getting kids off buses and walking more, and said you can potentially get some pushback from parents who are worried about safety, but the health benefits, right?
Well, let the students suggest it, and you won't get as much pushback from parents.
Good point. Okay. So I will follow up with the chair, Chair Eastman, and just to try to figure out how to keep the conversation going here and get something set up. The recycling field trip. So we have a date that they've reserved. David, is it David or Nancy? Nancy can't make it, right? April, is it April 24th? April 24th. Basically, there are stairs and it's about an hour and a half. Yeah. So, but
Are you gonna ask Dan to see if we can get a town community bus to go down, all ride down together?
that would be fabulous. It would be good. I was going to suggest carpooling. One question was time, and I'm sorry, Jessica's not here. Yeah, which I didn't hear from her, so she must have gotten distracted or pulled away. She said she can go, she works normally like an 8 to 4 schedule, but if she has enough lead time, she can go either earlier in the day or later in the day. My understanding was the latest start time would be 1:30. Was that yours, John?
Yes.
So do we want to do a 1:30 start time? And it's about a half hour, I think, to get there. Would that work for people?
How early could they do it? And maybe she could, what she wants to do she wants to do it either at the very beginning of her workday or at
Right,
the end.
yeah. We could we could find out. I have to shift something if we do it in the morning. But if I need to, I will. But, my preference would be the afternoon, but I want Jessica to be able to go, so.
Do it, but you'd have to ask her, but I think she would mean like 8:30 or 3:30.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you have any idea of how early they go? Because we didn't get that information.
I do not know how early they go, but we can find out. I'm gonna call Dan tomorrow about
Okay,
availability of the bus and
okay.
see how early we could go in the morning.
Yeah, and I will follow up with Jessica and ask.
She probably wouldn't wanna go, beyond it, even as late as 9:30 and earlier, as somebody said, earlier than 3:30.
Well, I had suggested 3:30. That was my suggestion. Yeah, and because I thought, oh, 3:30 in the afternoon if she got off work an hour early, because I think she works from home, you know. Yep. Okay. So we'll find out how early. Okay, new business. The mayor is launching an anti-litter campaign. And it's kind of she had a kickoff meeting, got some information from the various departments in terms of what enforcement is going on now, what, what options are in terms of littering fines, things like that. We got reports on, what the dumping problems are in town, because that's kind of the big issue. There was some discussion around kind of what we're using for trash containers in parks. And one of the things that was discussed was having better trash containers that are more tight, that animals can't get into, because, I've seen the trash containers at Farmington River Park upended, I assume by a bear. The assignment that came to us, the immediate assignment that came to us was the problems that everyone has with bees, yellow jackets, particularly in the fall, when the sugars are attracting them and you have discarded food and you have events like at 330 Park and trash containers that are open and the bees can get in. So a question for us was researching bees, basically researching what types of bees create the problems. I think having a sense of whether having more tighter containers would help. And to the mayor's credit, she is concerned about just having this eradicate the bees kind of attitude, because she understands the problem with pollinators and the problems they're having. So we have a research assignment that, I could, I think looking for some help with. I was going to talk to Zelene, because I think she would be a good one.
Talk to Jessica.
And Jessica?
I told you, Jessica has a beautiful, beautiful bee yard.
Okay. Jessica
They're
has
back-
bees. Okay.
We're talking about yellow jackets.
I think we're talking about yellow
You're
jackets
Yeah,
too,
I
but
think that's the most.
yeah.
The bees are not going to be the problem, it's the yellow jackets. You're
Right.
Is there some, uh,
Smoke.
I'm trying to think of mothballs or something of
No,
that nature.
smoke is the
you
best
could-
thing, I
you-
think.
You could put near the trash that would keep them away.
Oh, from the trash?
And yeah,
You can only do so much, but are we talking about, and then they could have a nest nearby too. We're not really.
well, there's ground nesting that you have to
Yeah.
worry about, but
So public education always comes up. I think people need to understand that not all bees are the same, and how to,
right.
watch out for yellow jackets, and, including if you have a bunch in your yard, watch where they're going, because if they've got a ground nest, you could very well be in danger. One of the more dangerous insects. But at an event,
Yep.
like you were saying, 330 Park, I assume you mean or at the concerts.
Right.
What happened one year for the back to school thing, I think it was, there were tons of yellow jackets around. It's in August, that's prime time, and people were eating apples and other food. Someone came along with I don't know where you get them, but fairly hefty, incense sticks. They weren't like the little tiny ones you use, you know. And by lighting those, um, the smoke and the smell was enough to really dissipate the yellow jackets. I was amazed. And so the various, booths had them. I don't know where you get them, but that's, you know, to the extent that you can only do so much, that's a safety thing that could happen for an event when people are
Right.
around, or they could just know.
Maybe you can get them at Home Depot or, you know,
You know,
one of
yeah.
those in their
Maybe,
garden
oh, well,
centers.
there's probably some things that, but these were actual incense sticks, but there are probably some other things. I know that they have those mosquito coils, but I'm not sure what they burn.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah, there's probably something like that. And, incense isn't, once it's lit, it's not an open flame, smoke. But yeah, that was, to me, I was like, wow, that really works. So I've never forgotten it. But,
Yeah, and we don't have to, we don't have to solve the problem here, but we're being asked to suggest solutions to this common problem. Yep,
I had problems with my home that I
Yeah.
lived in, especially the last few years. And I also was relatively allergic to them. So when I see them coming out of the hole in the lawn,
Yep.
I get the garden hose and flood it.
okay,
On this last
yeah. But yeah, so
Yeah.
public education, but I think, I mean, the smoke idea is a good idea. I will talk to Jessica and I will talk to Zelene and see if they can do some research, because I would like to get something back to the mayor just in terms of some ideas to put out there, because I think there, she wants kind of a coordinated campaign, and she's trying to think of all, the eventualities, and, hopefully if we get some better trash containers too, that might help in terms of insects congregating around open trash containers. Okay.
Google it.
Oh, yeah, well, I know, but someone else can Google it. Okay, that's good.
when is there a time frame for this campaign?
She was planning to launch, and do you know offhand, do you remember?
I actually was not at that meeting.
Yeah,
And we've now looped in our staff, so we'll be at the next meeting, but
Yep.
I think she wants to launch it certainly sooner than later.
right. And yeah, that was my impression as well. I got the package of materials kind of after the meeting because I was having a problem with my email. And so I was a little bit operating in the blind, but yeah, it was a spring launch is what I took away from it. Yeah. She was very, she and everybody else are very unhappy with all the nips. So we talked about that a bit as well, in terms of trash. Peppermint?
Hmm.
He's Googling. Good. Very good. So yeah, I think to the degree we can get some ideas and, in the next couple of weeks, maybe get something together and put something out there. I need to find out when the next meeting is. Maybe sooner rather than later. Let's see, we've got about 15 minutes left, which we can do this. Mosquito mitigation, the buckets of doom. The Recreation Committee and the Leisure Services Recreation Parks Department, they are in on doing something together, which is great. They thought it was a neat idea. In terms of like town events, town locations, they thought trying to do something on the green for the summer concert series made sense. Apparently, they've gotten some complaints about mosquitoes being really bad at Woodland Manor Open Space on Essex Lane. It's off of Woodlawn. There's basketball courts there, so maybe doing something there, in terms of setting something up. We got kind of creative, or the group got kind of creative at the Recreation Committee meeting. They talked about, having a workshop offered where these there was instruction and or having the materials to create it. They thought maybe as part of the summer camps, the kids could decorate the buckets, which would be a fun thing. Maybe we can approach Lowe's and Home Depot in terms of getting buckets. Maybe having some donated or getting a discounted rate. We had talked at a committee meeting about putting some money towards paying this, which is why I have as the next item, budget estimated balance of, and I think this is a good estimate. I think we're at about $1,590 in terms of remaining funds, but we've got Shred Day coming up on May 4th, and that will be $1,240 for the trucks. And to the degree we have some ancillary expenses. So I think we'll have, close to $300. We could certainly buy some of the mosquito dunks. I did a little research on the mosquito dunks, and it sounds like one dunk, you could quarter it, which gets a little messy, but that would give you a season, basically. One per, and one dunk is good for a month, apparently. So I certainly think we could pay for the dunks. So what I'm looking to the committee for is, are people in favor of doing that with our residual funds for this budget cycle, in terms of supporting that project? You buy these round things that look like, almost like donuts. And what you do is you have a bucket with water and straw, and you put a quarter of these in. It kills the larvae, but it's mosquito specific. Doesn't harm other bugs. Yep.
Okay, it draws the mosquitoes to that.
To lay their eggs,
And
to lay their eggs.
Yeah, because
I think I read about that.
Yep, and actually,
course,
if you Google it, it just comes up.
Should we be doing it, or should the recreation department be doing it?
No, we're doing it together. It came to us because the initial request was to spray.
Yeah.
So CEC is going to be involved, but the whole idea was we do education. And I think in terms of actually doing a lot of the bucket preparation, I think the parks, 330 Park would be involved in doing that.
Will those buckets stay where you put them?
That's a good question. I don't think we can solve all the problems or potential problems right now. I was tasked at the last meeting to go talk to them because people thought this was a good idea. This committee thought it was a good idea. I did that. I am reporting back. They think it's a good idea. They're talking about having kids at summer camp decorate buckets, thinking about where to get the buckets. So I'm just looking for a green light and we can talk about how to proceed. We have a little lead time.
Right away, I think of a concrete bucket that would be too hard to take away.
I think we will have security for the buckets. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. So, and I mean, I think part of what we're trying to do here is we want to prepare buckets and have them available for the public events, and we need to think about all that, right? And we want to be able to reuse them and reuse them for the season, but thank you.
Yeah.
And to spend some money?
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
I think the buckets would have to be put out.
Can I have a second, please?
Weeks.
And then we'll have discussion.
put them on the committee.
Yep. So do I have a second? You can't
Sec-
do that. Bob is seconding it. Okay, discussion. Go
Oh,
ahead.
Okay. I would assume that these would have to be put out a couple weeks or whatever the, what do you call it, development phase of the mosquitoes is.
Right, although I think mosquitoes keep
I mean,
laying eggs.
what I'm getting at, you couldn't put them out the day before. You'd have to
No,
put them
you
out
need a little lead, time.
some period of time.
We need to sort this all out. It's an experiment.
Incubation period of
It's it's a
mosquitoes.
pilot. Okay,
It's an action step, good.
yeah. Yep. And I like the idea of the kids decorating the buckets. I think that's a great idea. Summer camp. And the workshop would be to have, to have people be able to come in and actually make one or do what they need to and bring it home.
It's not just for the town events.
Right.
It's not that kind.
It's an educational,
Yeah, it's to cut
um,
down on the population throughout the season, and so people do need to put them in their homes because there's not gonna be town spraying, which is what people wanted. Does not really make sense.
right. And the other comment was having, India's department do the same kind of good promotional piece that was done before because that was effective and, not reinventing the wheel on those actions. Okay. Okay, so, all in favor of, no,
8 hours.
okay, there you go, 48 hours. So all in favor of endorsing the program and aye, okay,
Aye.
so we should vote. Thank you very much.
Nature-based solutions.
Do I detect a hint of sarcasm?
No, I'm serious.
Good. I think you're right.
Services, recreation, CC. We're nimble.
We are, okay. So moving on to announcements, updates. Nancy, I apologize, you're not going to have as much time as you need, probably.
A lot of time because really, I know you said speak on.
Yep.
I have put together a list that for those, oh, you did hand it out, Lynn, okay. Or it can go out as an attachment too. This is basically the bills that I picked up out of, primarily the Environment Committee and the Energy and Technology Committee of the legislature, and that appeared to, on the surface, align with things that we have thought about doing. There's many more bills and people are you're, at the very top, I gave the website cga.ct.gov if anybody wants to really dig into it. You can go there, you can find out when the public hearings are for any bill that you want, and you can listen. You can just zoom in or to the ETN, the network. You don't have to go down there, but you can write letters and go there. So I just, most of it we're not going to do as a committee. So what I'm going to do, because I have some of this done, but not all of it, is add all of these to what they call my list, so people can make their own list of the bills that they're following, and whenever there's an action, you'll get an email saying something happened with the bill you're interested in. Most of these are in public hearing status, which means there's been no official action except that the committee has brought them up to be talked about, which is like the first step. And there've been, ongoing public hearings, and then every once in a while, the committee meets, maybe once a week, they meet and they say, okay, we ready to move on any of these, and then they'll vote, up or down on a particular bill, like let's move this forward to the Senate and the House. So 3 of them, on the last 3 listed under Environment Committee, I noted that they've been voted out of the committee, though they don't yet show up on either the Senate or the House calendar. And they may not, because then it becomes the role of the leadership of those 2 chambers to decide what they're going to bring up for a vote. Short session, everything moves quickly.
Yep.
So I don't have summaries of these. That's kind of, in some cases, the bills are 60 pages long. So, but I will try to, add to this a little bit more. And if I get any sign that something is moving where we might want to contact our own representatives, which is often the best thing to do at this point. I don't see any of them on, well, none of our representatives are on either of these committees. So that just means we would write to them mostly once things come out of the committee. Say, hey, this bill is there. If it comes up for a vote, or, they can even influence whether it comes up for a vote in the Senate or the House, and, we're in favor of it. Or we're not. An act concerning. An act concerning is what it stands for. So, yeah, so it's just a short. Yes. Right. And so the food scrap, there is a public hearing tomorrow, and again, you can, listen to it if you'd like to. And then you can also, if you register, it might be too late now to register for tomorrow. To Zoom in and do your own, public testimony, but you can also, you can write anyway. You can write something in, there's a thing on the committees, if you go to the committee's page, there's submit testimony and you can pick it and you can say which bill you want to speak on.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, once you kind of figure it out,
Right.
it works pretty well. Yeah, and so I think what I want to do is, based on our discussion tonight, is kind of look around and see if I can fine tune this even more to the things we really want to pay attention to. I mostly put things that I know we've talked about and or that I'm interested in on this list, but to the extent that I can figure out whether there are certain provisions in some of these bills that specifically overlap with what we've been talking about, I'll try to get that information out no later than our next meeting. The session ends.
Sure.
Mar-
Do you know what the deadline is for getting bills out of committee, or when the last public hearings will be scheduled? Usually there's
I
kind of
don't know, but I can
dates.
find that out. Lori Brown, who attended our
Yeah.
our
Yep.
initial
She would
brainstorming
know. Yeah,
probably has all that stuff.
I'm sure she does. Yeah. Well, thank you, Nancy, for doing this. That's appreciated. Trees for Bloomfield, David, do you want to give a quick, anything to update the committee on? Okay, and David and I attended the Connecticut Urban Forest Council Annual Conference with a few other people. We were CEC's representatives for Trees for Bloomfield. And we got some nice recognition as a town group in terms of the projects and the Trees for Free program. So that was nice. Let's see. There was one piece of news I had. Oh, photo contest. We are going ahead with the photo contest. We have 2 judges again. We have a new judge. One of our new judges is Robin Sherwood, our new judge is Robin Sherwood, who's on the Public Arts Commission, which is kind of nice. She's a past winner. So it's, again, a nice connection with that commission. And I will be talking to Lynn about kind of getting that ready to go, because we usually open that up on June 1st. So, and at the Urban Forest Council, I talked to Heather Dion, who used to be the forester for Hartford, and she now works for Save a Tree. She's a district manager for Save a Tree based here in Bloomfield. And she was supportive of the notion of doing another Trees Without Leaves, recognizing trees by bark and silhouette in the fall. And so CC will sponsor that. We've done that a couple times. It's pretty simple to step up, and they partnered with us on that. So those are those updates. Bob, do you just want to say something about, you saw this micro grant opportunity for DOT?
Yeah.
You just brought it to.
What I was going to ask you, two things is the person or persons in the Board of Education that were especially interested in it, and the grant writer, and I would forward some Safe Ways to Schools emails to them that talk of the grants to apply for and so forth.
Actually, what I suggest is to do that, but ask Dave Malesko. Just send an email to Dave Malesko, because Kevin Goff, who's on the Trails Committee, and you are too, took this information about this program where there are small grants from the DOT around that initiative. He was, Kevin sort of forwarded on, I think, to Joe Merritt maybe, and to Dave Malesko. And Dave Malesko is working on a grant application, I think, for the Spur Trail. So, I mean, that was just sort of a natural place to send it because he's kind of looking at all that. So I would, I would encourage you to just send a quick email to Dave with the idea of looping in the Board of Ed.
Because if they build out the spur trail, then we just need shorter connections to it to bring in, you know, more numbers of students that could walk without
Yeah.
walking on the streets.
So I think, do you have Dave's email, Dave Malesko?
I don't.
Okay, I'll give it to you after the meeting. It's very easy. But I think just sort of, you'll know what you're talking about in terms of referencing that grant and those micro grants. And
I would also include Dan Carter.
Thank you very much.
Because a lot of these grants have been initiated by the town engineer, John Tesey, who just retired, but they're working to hire a replacement. And so that's actually where the grant might be generated.
Okay,
But I would certainly, and also there was along the same lines, I just received an announcement today from CROG on some additional multi-use path grants that are going to become available.
that's great. That's good news. Okay. Good. Thank you for that, John. I know Dave's got his hands in stuff too, because I think everybody has their hands in trying to help out at this point. The last two are just more reminders. There's not the Arbor Day celebration, cleanup day in honor of Earth Day, but all of those things are on April 27th. So there's like one day where two different activities are occurring. There's the cleanup day from 9 to noon, I think it is, that the BBC, working with DPW, is organizing. And people participating would be great. Basically, there's, I think, a link to sign up. And I think that Leisure Services is the ones that are doing the registration. It's on the town calendar. So pizza will be served after the cleanup. And then following that, there'll be an Arbor Day celebration here at Town Hall because another tree is being planted in the Arboretum. So I encourage, if you're in town and you can participate, I'm signing up for the cleanup. And there are a couple folks from the Land Conservancy who are also signing up to help out. So April 27th. It's driven by DPW. And so I don't know. It's driven by where they know there are issues with litter.
There will be designated spaces and there will be pre-selected, and I think there may be at least two, but I'm not sure, but they will be pre-selected and predetermined.
Right.
Assigned to them?
Yes.
Yep.
The idea of registering is you are assigned to a team and then you show up at 3:30 Park. That's what we did last year. And it's like, here's your team assignment. You have a DPW, actually you have a DPW truck go out with you because they park behind you to protect you from the traffic. And they also are available to, you're given the equipment, you're given the bags. They pick everything up after. You're given pickers, which are easy to break because I broke mine last year. Yep, and you've got vest and everything else. So safety vest, that kind of thing. And then finally, our next Shred and Electronics Recycling Day is May 4th. Mark your calendars. If you're here, I hope you can help. And we will start working on that just in terms of logistics and, planning, like now, because it's not that far off. Any other comments? We're about 5 minutes over. Go ahead.
Only that I think somebody, not us, should organize some student hikes on our trails in town during school hours so they can get out of school and go on them. I don't think the kids know where the trails are.
And that was, I mean, I think the idea of trying to get the kids outside, the Board of Ed was receptive to that kind of notion. So, but I mean, the key, I think, is trying to weave the things we're doing into the curriculum in some fashion. So that it's related, you know, it's practical application. What they're seeing is practically related to things they're talking about in school. Dave, you want to say something? Do we have a second? Bob? Okay. 6:07.
What is the capacity digester?
Well, we have 200 to 300 pounds a day. And
Oh, great. My God. Cafeteria?
no,
That's great.
from our culinary department, which includes,
Don't leave. They're making it really easy for us. It's our letter, it's our appointment letter and our disclosure. So fill out your disclosure form and come in and get sworn in.
You collecting the mics or will you help for me?
Thank you.
Sure.
Didn't touch.
All right.
So from culinary services, so if not individual residents?
not yet, they're just starting program. Well, a pilot program on